Today I'll be teaching you how to add a family member to a photo using Photoshop CC 2015. If you don't already have Photoshop, you'll want to go into the internet and just search for Photoshop, and Adobe's usually pretty good at directing you to where you need to go in order to get that. So I already have it opened up here on my computer. First thing you'll want to do is open a new project. So you go to that, you give your project a name, adding a family member, let's say, and then you leave the rest the same. Photoshop has it set up sort of how you want to, and it won't be that big of a deal for what we're doing. So you click OK, and then you have your new project here. So first thing you'll want to do is get your picture of your family and the family member that you'll be adding. So you go to Open, and you open up that family photo, and then you do that exact same thing, File Open, and picture, here's, say, the guy that we want to add to the photo. So now we have these two photos. First thing you'll want to do is go over to the toolbar on the left hand side and grab this magnetic lasso tool. Don't select that. This is so that we can grab this guy from this photo here and start putting him into the next photo. And so you'll just drag this up around. Usually pretty good about lassoing directly to where you need it to. And then the bottom here, we don't care that much because he'll be hidden by the family in the next photo anyway. So what you do after that is right click, layer via copy, and now you have a layer of this guy over here. We can go ahead and rename that so we know who he is. Let's name him new guy. And once you do that, once you have this layer renamed over here, you can go ahead and left click, hold left click, and drag him over to this photo. And then if you just drop him on top of there, it'll paste him right in. And we can see that we have his layer added to this photo. So obviously he's too big for the photo. The next step is to resize him to where we want him to be. To do that, you can click Control T and drag him around, and we'll say we want him right back in between these two people right here. So we'll want to size them sort of to about the size of the people in the background of this photo. So you can drag him over there, do a little bit of resizing. Oh, now he's a little too small. Don't want him to be squeezed at all, so a little bit larger. Alright, and there we can see he's just about the same size as the other people in the background. So now that we have that done, we can go ahead and hide them using this little eyeball next to the layers on the right hand side. And by clicking on that, first you have to make sure you're done transforming this guy. You can do that by selecting the tools over here and clicking apply. So once you have that, you can go ahead and hide him, and then we'll want to reselect this magnetic lasso tool. And this is because we want to make it so these family members are in front of this guy so that he'll blend into the background better. So what we'll do is we'll sort of select around the people that we plan on putting around him. So these couple of people right here. If you need to get more accurate magnetic lasso, say if it's not cooperating and it's going into the background, you can left click individually so that it lines up better with what you're trying to do. However, this is going pretty well for me so far. Then once we get to the right, you can just sort of make educated guesses as to how large this man's body is going to be. So now that we have this selected, we can go ahead and we can right click, layer via copy again. You want to make sure that you're selecting the layer that the people are on too, so that you're not making a new layer of that guy, you're making a new layer of these people. So right click, layer via copy, and then you'll see that this layer got added. We'll rename that to family members. And in order to put this guy behind them, we'll go ahead and bring him back. In order to put this guy behind the family members, the next step will be drag this down underneath that. That means that that layer is on top and this guy is a little bit below it. We can click Control T on his layer again, and we'll be able to drag him right back here. And just sort of adjust how tall he would be normally. We'll say that is a good height for him. And then you go ahead and apply that again. Okay, so now we can see that obviously he's not blending in quite perfectly yet. The top of his head is cut off, and there's a white line around his neck here. So the next step we'll want to do is to fill in the top of that head. You can do this by going over to the left side on the tools section and selecting the clone stamp tool. That we'll make it so that we can take the pattern of his hair and just fill out his head with it, and it'll look natural doing that. So what we'll want to do is click Control and then the plus on your keyboard to zoom in, because we'll want to get a more detailed look of the top of his head. And so now that we have that, we can start copying. And so you'll want this to be a little bit smaller. You can select how big this tool is and what kind of brush strokes you want with it using this up here. You can leave everything relatively the same, except for you'll want to adjust the size so that it's a little bit smaller, so that we can make some more fine-tuned adjustments to his head. And so to start copying, you click Alt, and then you click the pattern that you want to copy, which for this case is his hair. And so we'll click here, make sure that you have his layer selected still. We'll click here, and you can see here this dot, it sort of has that brown color, and it's actually his hair color, so we'll just start filling in the top of his head with that. You can zoom out and zoom in just to see if it's looking alright. And there we can see it sort of just looks like his head. So if you've got that looking good, the next step that we can do is to get rid of this white line around him that's just coming from this picture over here. The white in the background is getting into this picture as well. So we can zoom back in. We can select the eraser tool on the toolbar, which is right here. To select the eraser, might want to make this a little bit smaller again. It's already pretty small, but we might want to go to 1, just because we'll want to be doing 1 pixel at a time here. You can see sort of the white little squares on their own around his head. So now that you have that selected, you can just click, and it'll get rid of that white border that we don't want. And we'll just blend now into the green of the field, which is, as we can see, what we want. It'll make it look like he's blending into the picture a lot better. So just make sure you get all of those. And make it look like he has gray hairs. Alright, so now that we have that done, we can really see that he's starting to blend into this picture now. Something else that you could do to make him blend into the picture better, another step, is zoom back in again. And then go over here to this side and select the either dodge or burn tool. What this will do is it'll change the lighting on his face. As we can see, his face might be a little bit lighter than, or a little bit darker, excuse me, than the people around him. And so in order to lighten that up, we can take what's called the dodge tool, and you might want to make it just a general head size. This will change the size of that. Exposure here will be how intense the effect is. We might want to reduce that down to the single digits is really all we'll need. And this is if you want to affect the highlights, midtones, or shadows, but that's getting a bit more in depth, so we'll leave that alone. We'll just want to change these two for right now. And then you can just do individual clicks on the head to lighten up some of those shadows. Make it look like the lighting on his face is more appropriate to that that's in the field. We can see that the shadows on everyone else's face if you go into the individual pixels, you can see that the shadows are right here and here, and also around the eyes, so you can see the darker squares here and here. So we might want to affect that by now selecting the burn tool. That'll make regions darker, and we'll want to get more specific with this, so we can reduce this size down a little bit, maybe even to just single pixels, since we'll just be affecting a few pixels at a time. And we can just darken these shadows up around the mouth and the eyes a little bit to make it look like he's actually standing in this field with these people. Just where you see these lighter pixels down here, you might want to change those. It'll make it look like the lighting's a little more natural on his face and less like he was in a studio to get the photo taken. Maybe down around his neck too. deepen those shadows a little bit. Alright, and so now that we have that done, we can see that maybe the lighting's a little bit better on his face and he blends into this picture a little better. And so that is how you can add a family member in Photoshop. As you can see, we can just remove them and add them easily now, in case you decide that you would rather not add a person after the fact. Yeah, that's how you do it.